For those who are watching a recording that I promised that I would put up, and please God, I should be able to do it right away. If you have any questions, so I'm putting it out there now. If you're watching this video and you have any questions, feel free to email me, Devorah@chabadwestmount.com, and I will answer you, or have my husband answer you, to answer any of the questions that you may have regarding Pesach, or anything that I bring up in the class. If it's philosophical in nature or practical in nature, I'll be happy to answer that for you. So we mentioned a couple of times before that 30 days before the holiday, we start getting ready for the holiday. And Pesach is the one holiday that I think we really take that very seriously, because logistically, there's a lot that we have to do in order to get ready for Pesach. So there's two aspects to Pesach. There is the practical, physical aspect, where we change our kitchen, and we change our diet, and we change the way we eat. And we have like a third level of kosher that we use for Pesach. And then there is the spiritual / philosophical aspect of Pesach, which is no less important, because we know that to be a Jew, a holistic Jew, is not just to do things by rote, or not to do things only because of tradition, though we cannot discount the value and importance that tradition does impart on ourselves and our children. And nevertheless, the added meaning and having an added spiritual aspect to Pesach rounds out our Pesach, so that we're not just passing through the holiday. We're not Passover, but we're really tapping into the spiritual energies of this time, and to really make the Pesach celebration a comprehensive Pesach celebration. And so when we approach Pesach and we approach the study for Pesach, it is always going to come through the lens of the practical and the spiritual. It is a partnership that we have to have, where we go through with both, and one cannot be substituted for the other. Clearly, there are practical implications of preparing for Pesach. So the first overarching practical implication, which was just mentioned before, is the notion that on Pesach, we do not eat any chametz. And the prohibition of chametz, the prohibition against chametz, is something that comes straight from the Torah. It comes straight from Exodus, that the Torah tells us that because the Jews could not rise their bread, we shall have no leavened foods for 7 days. So 7 days we shall eat no leavened foods, and we shall also not have it in our possessions, and we should have no benefits. So our sages say, bal yira'eh, bal yimatzeh. That means that you should not be able to see it, you should not be able to find it, and you should not be able to enjoy it. So, for example, what would be an example of leaven, something that's leavened that you can enjoy? It would be a product that you don't eat, or something that you have. Let's say an example would be a soap that contains oatmeal. There are some soaps on the market for sensitive skin that contains oatmeal. So that would be an example of a category of an item that we are not allowed to have what we call hana'ah. We're not allowed to have any type of pleasure. So Aveeno soaps typically have oatmeal in them. And because of that, we avoid such soaps, because we don't use anything that gives us pleasure. So there's a triple injunction for chametz, which is anything that is leavened. And of course, what is categorized as leavened is a very large list. Should not be seen, should not be consumed, you should not derive pleasure from, it should not be found. Now, a whole year, we have the laws of kosher, and the laws of kosher are similar in a certain way to the laws of the Passover kosher, because the laws of the Passover kosher, like was mentioned before, when we kosher something, we use the same methods of koshering, heat for heat, boiling for boiling, and so on and so forth. But we have something different with Pesach, and that is that whereas in the normative laws of kosher, there is something called batal b'shishim, which means that it invalidated or nullified. The non-kosher is nullified if it is 1/60th, 1/60th. So for example, if you have a pot of meat soup or meatballs, and it is an 8-liter pot, and 1 drop of milk falls into the pot, this is considered, obviously by accident, this is considered to be batal b'shishim. It means that it becomes nullified, the milk becomes completely nullified because it's such a minute amount of milk commensurate to the big pot. So in general, when we have, if we get milk and meat mixed up, we have, if it was cold meat or cold milk, what we do is we rinse off the vessel with cold water, put it away for 24 hours, and then we can use it. If it is hot, then it has to be koshered. When it comes to Pesach, there isn't any leeway. There's no leeway for this kind of just rinsing off. Pesach is, if something becomes chametz thick, we put it away and we hide it till after the holiday. And similarly, there's no notion of batal b'shishim. There is no nullification of 1/60th. Even a drop of chametz makes it not kosher for Passover. So for Passover, the strictness of the kashrut becomes really amplified and causes us sometimes tension when we are trying to make sure that our houses are kosher for Passover and we're not sure, is this considered to be kosher for Passover? So first and foremost, one of the big overarching notions of Pesach, one of the laws of Pesach, is the idea that we do not consume anything that is leavened, and we also don't have it in our premises. As we know that Hillel, during the Talmud, made provisions for chametz that could not be gotten rid of. Let's say, for example, somebody owns a distillery and they cannot destroy the distillery. They can't get rid of the chametz, or someone owns a bakery. Let's say Kosher Quality Bakery, or the main bakery on Victoria. What do they do with all the chametz that is found in all their utensils? And a bakery is full of chametz. So in the sages devised a way that a person can not lose all of their possessions because it becomes chametzik. And so they created what we call mechiratz chametz. Mechiratz chametz is an idea of you sell the chametz, and it has to be done through a rabbi because it's a very complicated procedure actually. And so what you do is you give the rabbi authorization, you give him power of attorney to sell your chametz on your behalf, and he does it. So in the case of chametz that is actually sold, this chametz must be locked up, put away, out of sight, and not accessible during Pesach. So let's say you have chametz pots, or you have some chametz in your house, and you have a cupboard that is chametz stick. Then what you do is you just lock it up. You could put some tape, you could write chametz, and you sell it. So when you sell your possessions, you sell that as well. And you cannot go into that cabinet or room or whatever it is that you sell. Sometimes people are not home and they sell their apartment or their house during Pesach if there is chametz there. Some people look at this and they say it's a gimmick. I'm not selling my chametz. What's really happening here? But the truth of the matter is that the way the chametz is sold is actually according to the law. There is money that's exchanged, and it is considered to be on a spiritual and physical level, a true sale. And everyone is enjoined to make sure that they sell their chametz, even if they don't think that they have chametz. It is an important thing to do, because what you're doing is you're de facto getting rid of the chametz that you think that you may have by selling it, and then of course the chametz is bought back after Pesach. So these are important things that sometimes in the excitement of Passover we forget. The most important thing is, of course, to get rid of the chametz and to sell your chametz, and to make sure that your chametz is sold. And again, we have on our website, we have a Passover portal. If you want to email me, if you need anything, I'll be happy to do it. It's important that it's done. So getting rid of the chametz is an important part of Pesach, and we have a procedure called the Decath chametz. The night before the Seder, we check for the chametz and we look for it, even though we may have gotten rid of it. So in order that we do not make a blessing for nothing, we put out the 10 pieces of bread and we make the blessing for searching for chametz. And then the morning of the Seder, we have a window of opportunity where we can burn the chametz. And after that, we do not consume or own any chametz, which is every year it's a little different, around 11 o'clock or so in the morning. I don't know the exact time offhand. So the burning of the chametz is again done with, give it to the rabbi to burn, but this is all part of the process of getting rid of chametz. So when we look at the overarching laws of Pesach, one is the getting rid of the chametz. The other is the eating of the matzah. Then the other is, of course, the Pesach sacrifice, which we don't do. And then the vestige of that, which is the marar, which was eaten with the Pesach sacrifice. And finally, it is the telling of the story. So these are the four, I guess, the four prongs of Pesach, which is to get rid of the chametz, to eat matzah, to remember the Pesach offering and the marar, and then to tell the story. This is the overarching. These are the four biblical, I guess, parts of the injunction about Pesach. So let's talk a little bit about chametz and the fact that, which is very interesting, that the matzah is can so easily turn into chametz. Yet we have to take all the strictures to make sure that the matzah doesn't turn into chametz, and we nevertheless are using something that can turn into chametz very easily. I saw a beautiful teaching from a Hasidic rabbi. He says as follows: the night before Pesach, we go into our homes and we make a blessing and we search for the chametz. And of course, we put out the 10 little pieces of bread wrapped in plastic or whatever it is, and then we gather the chametz and then we burn that chametz, or we bring it to the shul to burn, or give it to the rabbi to burn, or burn it ourselves in the kitchen sink or whatever, not the kitchen sink that's kosher, or in a safe place, or flush it down the toilet if you have no option. What's very interesting is that when we do this, we're supposed to use a candle. So if a person doesn't have a candle, use a flashlight, but traditionally the way it is done is to use a candle. Of course, we have to be very careful with the candle. Candle is fire, not to mention that the wax can destroy our carpets and our floors, but we do use a candle. And the reason why we use a candle is because the candle shines light on the dust better than regular light. As we know, with a flashlight, it's a focused light. And one of the customs that we have is that after this procedure is done, this bir chametz and this bedikas chametz is done, we take the candle. We have a little spoon sometimes that we use to find the chametz. We take the candle, the spoon, and the bread that we used to perform this procedure, and we burn it all together. And the question that is asked is, well, we understand why we burn the chametz. We understand even why we may burn the spoon, because the spoon was used perhaps to touch the chametz. But the candle never came in contact with the chametz. It never made contact. It was just serving as a flashlight, as it were. So why do we have to burn the candle along with the chametz? And I saw a beautiful teaching from a Hasidic Rebbe, and he says as follows: that the chametz, the chametz is synonymous with arrogance, negativity, the negative aspects of our personality. So that when we're searching for chametz, the physical chametz, we also have to do like an internal search on our spiritual chametz, our arrogance, our ego, and also the negative traits that we all have. And so that when we do this procedure, the candle was used to do what? The candle was used to search for negativity. And in as much as we have to search for that negativity, we have to search for the chametz. Nevertheless, searching for negativity is an action that has negative energy, so to speak. So he says that even though that candle never came in contact with the chametz, we still have to burn the candle with the chametz, because something that was used to search for negativity should be gotten rid of. So in as much as we have to search for the negativity, once we've done it, once we've searched for our negativity and we've kind of eradicated it from our homes and from our hearts, we burn even the instrument that was used with not being touched. We burn that instrument because ultimately searching for negativity is not a good thing. And it's negative. And so this is a beautiful teaching that I thought that we do look for chametz and we have to eradicate the chametz, but nevertheless, that's something that we do once a year and not every day, because when we look inside ourselves to see the negativity within ourselves, so the chametz is the euphemism for that negativity, for the arrogance, for the parts of our personality that needs to be cleaned out. It could bring us to a lower place. When we look at a mirror and we look at ourselves in a very honest way, and we try to eradicate the arrogance and the negativity from ourselves, it's a negative exercise. It has to be done, but once we did it, we have to get rid of the whole thing and try to be positive from then on. So I thought that was a beautiful teaching. Now, in terms of looking for the chametz, so we find this idea that chametz, the leavened bread, is associated with the notion of problematic personality traits, and especially with ego, because we know that chametz is the result of bread rising, and so rising creates a certain air, and so the air, the puffiness of the air that we love in our breads when we make challah, and that's what we look for. We look for those little air pockets, because that's what makes bread so delicious. But those air pockets are symbolic of arrogance, the puffed up. And there is a time in life, and Pesach is the time where we have to take a strong look at our ego and our arrogance, and we have to get rid of it. So the process of searching for chametz is not just the process of searching for physical chametz, but also spiritual chametz. And the process of eating the matzah, again, is the exercise not only of remembering the Exodus and the faith that the Jewish people had by taking the matzah on the back of their shoulders and leaving, but it also reminds us that we have to be in a state of humility. And there's a beautiful teaching, again, from the Hasidic masters, and they say like this: if you notice that the prayer that we make when we search for chametz, and I'm going to go into the Haggadah in a minute, the prayer that we make when we search for chametz starts with the words kol chamira v'chamira, every bit of leavened bread. That's what it means. It's a verse in Aramaic, and it has the same beginning. The word kol. The other prayer that begins with kol is what? Anyone? Which big prayer begins with kol?
Kol Israel.
Kol. Oh, the prayer. A prayer.
Kol Israel.
Kol.
Kol Nidre.
Kol Nidre. Kol Nidre is the other prayer. There are two prayers that begin with kol. Kol Nidre, the prayer that we make at the advent of Yom Kippur, where we remove any promises that we may be making, and it has to be done in a state of humility. And then the Kol Chamira, which is also a prayer that does the same thing, where we have to kind of remove our arrogance and enter into a state of humility. And the Kol Nidre prayer is us coming to God, so to speak, and offering ourselves in terms of fasting to God. And the Kol Chamira prayer really is God coming to us, because the holiday of Pesach is very much associated with the revelation and the munificence and the blessing that comes from above. And as I mentioned in the Parsha class yesterday, and as I mentioned many times, there are two types of blessings, or the two types of spiritual inspirations, or two types of revealed good that we have. One comes from our work, the work that we do, and the spiritual work that we do, and then we get to a place of revelation, and it comes through hard work. And then the other is the revelation that just comes from God, meaning that we we have blessing. So Passover is that holiday where the revelation is very open and revealed, and because we have this historic redemption. So that's just an opening about the chametz and the matzah and the job that we have to do before Passover, which is to get rid of the chametz in our house, get rid of the chametz in our kitchens, and then get rid of the chametz in our hearts and minds and souls. And easier said than done, but when we do look for the chametz, that's something that we have to bear in mind. And probably the ego is probably the hardest thing to deal with, because on the one hand, the ego keeps us healthy. We need to have a healthy ego to have proper boundaries with people and to be emotionally and spiritually healthy. On the other hand, if it gets too distended and too aggravated, it becomes a problem in of itself. Now, what I would like to do today, I'm going to be using the Chabad.org Haggadah, and we're going to use it as a framework from which we're going to do our study on the Haggadah. And I'm going to share the page for that. And I just want to encourage everyone, if you want to download the Chabad.org Haggadah, it is downloadable free of charge. And you can also order a copy of it on Amazon, and it will come before Pesach. And it's just a lovely little Haggadah with these teachings infused in it, very practical, easy to use, user-friendly Haggadah. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to use it as a springboard. I'm going to share. Let me find my.
When you order on Amazon, what do you say? Chabad Haggadah?
You go straight for the link. I'll give you the link, and you don't have to look for it. Okay, so this is.
Send it to us?
Yeah, this is.
Send to everybody?
Yes, I'm going to. First of all, I'll put it here. I'll put it up here for you to see, and then afterwards, we can, and I could just, and I'll put it in the comments as well. Okay, so here, this is the, let me just do the view. So, okay, here we go. So we have this. I'm just going to share this with you, and then I'm going to share the link for you to find this, that you can actually download this for free. They made it really, really easy, very user-friendly. You don't have to know too much to do this.
No, but it's better to
Okay,
order.
so this is the Haggadah, and that's what I'm going to use today to go through, to start the Haggadah for part one of the Haggadah. And then I would like to share with you. Yeah, it was done by Chabad, and it's a very user-friendly Haggadah. And then I'm going to share with you this page. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see this?
Yeah, we see the page.
Yeah, okay, you see the page where it says order on Amazon, free download. You see this?
No, I don't.
No, you don't see. Okay, so let me just.
I see Haggadah.
Okay, so let me stop the share and start this share.
I just want to order because I have it in my hands, but download.
Yes, so let me just find, here it is. Okay, so let me share this page. Okay, so this is the Haggadah, and I'm going to give you the link right now. I'm going to give you the link in the comments, and you could just click on it. Let me just go to the comments here. You see that you can get a free download. So when you click on this, what happens is you get this, the email, a send link, and then if you go to order on Amazon, you go straight to Amazon like this, and you don't even have to do anything else. So here we go. Let me just copy and paste this and put this in the thing. If you want to order this, I find it to be a really charming Haggadah. And let's do comments. Chat.
I want to order it.
Okay, here we go.
So you're sending the email, right? On my email, I open and click
so
the link.
it's in the comments, and if you want me to send you an email.
I don't have comments. I don't.
Okay, you don't have comments. Okay, so if you want us, I'll send you an email afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, and that is the.
I will order it today.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's that. And then let me go back to sharing my Haggadah that I have on my computer, so we could get started into the textual study of the Haggadah. And where am I?
Because I don't even know where my Haggadah is and my pots.
So this, again, like the Haggadah was, I'm not getting paid for promoting this. I just find that it's a very fun Haggadah. And like I said, you can get it for free without charge by download. But if you want to print it, it'll probably be cheaper just to get it done from Amazon. So here's the Haggadah, and let's get to the pages. So
Yeah, good.
Okay, here we go. Okay,
Oh
so
my
they
God.
start off, like, let me just make this bigger.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
You,
Gorgeous.
all
Oh
right,
my God, you're beautiful.
let me see if I can just get this a little bigger. No, sorry, I
Very nice.
apologize for.
Clear, we can read it.
You can read it? I can't read
I
it.
can read it actually.
Okay, let me just see this 1 second. I want to make it a little
Okay.
bigger. So this is the Haggadah. Again, it starts off with a message from the Rebbe about every generation. Everyone has to see themselves as being liberated from Egypt. I saw a beautiful teaching yesterday that says the following: the minute you stop going out of Egypt, you're back in Egypt. Okay? The question that we ask is, why is it that we have to keep leaving Egypt every single year? We left Egypt 3,300 and some years ago. Why do we have to keep leaving Egypt every single year? Our sages say, B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam liros es atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. In every generation, a person has to see themselves as if they personally left Egypt. And there are sages that even say, B'chol yom v'yom chayav adam liros es atzmo ki'ilu yatsa miMitzrayim. Every day, a person has to see themselves as having left Egypt. So when we talk about Passover, we're talking about the Exodus. We're talking about the mitzvahs, the getting rid of the chametz and the eating of the matzah. And we're talking about the storytelling. The overarching idea of Pesach is that we actually ourselves are leaving Egypt. We are going through the process. We are recreating the process of leaving Egypt. Some people are very creative at their Seder table. They actually do like all types of reenactments. I've seen some funny, wonderful things that people do. I know there is a Sephardic custom that is a beautiful custom, I think, that when they say the Helach Ma'anya or the Halach Ma'anya, depending on the Haggadah that you use, that there's someone knocks on the door, and they say who's there, and they say we came from Egypt, and they open the door and they have the matzah and they pass the matzah over their heads, and they sing, B'hilulat Yatzanu miMitzrayim, and they sing the Helach Ma'anya, and it's to reenact like the reenactment of the Seder. A huge part of the Seder is to tell our children and to tell ourselves the story of Egypt. And we have to see ourselves as being liberated in every single generation. And like I mentioned, the Hasidic masters say that if a person stops leaving Egypt, they find themselves right back in Egypt again. What does this mean? Egypt comes from the word, Egypt is Mitzrayim, and it comes from the word Matzah. Tsar means a constriction. And so Egypt represents the ultimate constriction, the constriction that the Jewish people faced when they left Egypt. And it also represents the constrictions that we face in our lives. And so Passover rather is a time where we open up our eyes and see the constrictions of our lives and see what we have to do to fix them. I saw a beautiful teaching from Rabbi Shais Taub, and he says that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they left in a hurry. One of the things that happened really at the time that they left Egypt was that they were actually kicked out of Egypt. We know that Pharaoh said, get out of here, and he literally kicked them out. Then he had, of course, remorse, and he chased them and tried to bring them back, of course, unsuccessfully. But they were literally kicked out of Egypt. They did not leave Egypt necessarily fully. And the proof of that the Jewish people did not leave Egypt fully, is the fact that for 40 years, they still had to wander in the desert because they still had Egypt inside of them, and they had to kind of throw off the yoke of Egypt. And he says that in our own Egypt, the Egypt that we face in our own daily life, so our own strictures, our own problems that we have, is an Egypt that we cannot also sometimes get rid of ourselves, and we need to have outside help. And the outside help means that we have to look to other sources to get us away from where we are, because a person cannot save themselves from their own jail. So the idea that we have to see ourselves as liberated from Egypt, and our sages say in the Dayenu, which we're going to get into very shortly, that not today probably, but we're going to get into it, that if not for the fact that God took us out of Egypt, we would never have left. And the reason why we never would have left is because we just wouldn't understand ourselves to know to leave. And this is true whenever we're in an unhealthy situation or an unhealthy circumstance. Sometimes we have to get thrown out of that circumstance, pushed out on our, literally thrown out, because we don't ourselves understand and see this, see this for ourselves. Okay, so that's just the introduction of the letter of the Rebbe. Now let's get to the next page. Okay, so here, this is very, just a very basic, reminder of how to get rid of Pesach and what to do. And again, they will like help you out with that and tell you the different things that have to be done. This is the sale of the chametz, which I spoke about. Okay, and then the night before Passover, the finding and the searching and the destroying chametz. Okay. This is the kol chamira that I was talking about. I want to see if I can highlight this. Yes. Remember, I spoke about the kol chamira that we say, all leaven and anything leavened that is in my possession. This is, again, when I mentioned that it has the same word, it starts with the same words as kol nidre, and this is the prayer that we make afterwards. Okay. And here is a glimpse of the prayer that reminds us that we're not just saying a prayer for the chametz that we found, that the physical chametz, but also the spiritual chametz. And this prayer, by the way, our sages tell us that when we make the kol chamira v'chamira, when we make this prayer, we should do it in our language. The reason why this prayer, kol chamira v'chamia, the ika b'rishusti, the chazese or the lo chazese, the chamisne v'lo de chamisne, the v'ara the lo v'arta, okay, this is in Aramaic. I don't know if you can hear the difference, but this is in Aramaic. And the reason why it was in Aramaic is because it is a responsibility that we have to actually verbalize this in a language that we understand. So in the time of the Haggadah, in the time of the Talmud, when the Seder and the Haggadah was finalized, we say this in Aramaic. They said it in Aramaic, but we should today say it in our own language. And so we say, all leaven and anything leavened that is in my possession, whether I have known it or not, whether I have observed it or not, whether I have removed it or not, shall be considered not and ownerless as the dust of the earth. This declaration is an important part of getting into Pesach, and everyone should say it in English. And again, if you want a copy of the Haggadah, I can also email you a copy of the Haggadah if you don't know how to download it. But this is something that you should say. Now, this is something that is said while the chametz is burning. If somebody wants to read it in English, it's very nice, and it shows you that Passover is more than just the physical destruction of chametz, but really we're tackling something very deep and spiritual. So if someone wants to read it, just go right ahead. Anyone?
Where all leaven and anything from where? Let
a new desire. This is while the chametz is burning, we say, I'll read it in Hebrew, and then after you can read it in English. Hatuma tavir min haaretz v'sitrinu harat havrinu mitanu v'titin lanu v'titin leiv basar lavdecha be'emes v'chol sitra achra v'chol klibas v'chol arisha v'ashlan tichla v'savir memshel zadim min haaretz v'chol ma'ikim lashchina tiva'are b'ruach ba'ar b'ruach mishpat v'shem shevartas v'tzrayim v'esel kehem. So this is the Hebrew. Someone can read the English, okay? And I'm going to highlight it.
Okay. Can I read it?
Go ahead.
But
this
it's
is what we say when we burn the chametz.
Let a new desire emerge from within a God. God, our God, and God of our fathers. That just as I have eradicated chametz from my home and from my possessions, so you will, somebody, are you moving it for me?
Yes, I am.
Or because better don't, because it's
Okay.
easier for me if you
Okay.
don't.
Okay.
Because otherwise you make it very dark.
Okay,
So
okay.
you will eradicate all these forces of evil from your world and obliterate the spirit of impurity from the earth.
Okay.
Eliminate, no, Devorah, don't do it, I
Okay,
cannot
good,
say
okay.
that. Eliminate our wicked impulses from within us and give us a heart of flesh, we may truly serve you. My oldest side of otherness, ultra achra, and all the thick disguises that conceal the divine life within them, kalipos, along with all wickedness, go up in smoke as you vanquish the dominance of evil from the earth. And all the oppression of the Shekhinah, may you obliterate them with a spirit of vanquishment, vanquishment and the spirit of justice, just as you vanquished ancient Egypt and its deities in those days at this time. Amen. Selah.
Okay, so what we're talking about here, when it says a side of otherness, this is mystical references where we talk about the Sitra Achra, the other side. This is a manifestation of energies that God creates in this world for the purpose of giving us free choice, but those energies are negative energies, and they deny God in this world. And where do we see the manifestation of this? And why is this associated with the burning of the chametz? Because the denial of God, of God's providence in this world comes from arrogance. Now just look at now, tie it into our present day and age. You see the war in Ukraine. You see the craziness, really, in the way Putin is acting. And you ask yourself, what is driving a person to destroy a legacy, to destroy a life, to destroy a country, to destroy his own country? What drives a person? The answer is very clearly, it's ego. It's a don't you dare cross me. And if you cross me, this is what I'm going to do. So all evil, including the evil of Pharaoh, is found in ego, and ego is represented by chametz. So we ask God that he remove this layer of extra opaqueness in this world, this layer that doesn't allow blessing to flow through. And we say this as part of our bir chametz. Okay, so that's that with that. Now we speak about the matzah. This is the blessing that the people who bake matzah say. We're not going to go into it because time does not allow for it. But again, you can look at it when you have a chance. Here is the blessings for the lighting of the Shabbos candles. This year, the first night of Pesach is on Shabbos also. So we would say, when we bless the candles, we would say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvos v'tzivanu, lahadlik ner shel Shabbos v'shel Yom Tov. Here they have a very fun and easy to use pre-Passover shopping list. So, later on again, you can look at that. Now let's get to the Seder. So we know that we have 12 steps to the Seder, or 14, depends how you count it. And these are Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, Yachatz, Magid, Rachsa, Maitzi, Matzah, Mara, Parach, Shulchan Aruch, and Merach HaLamertza. So we start with the Kiddush on the wine, the eating of the vegetable, the breaking the matzah, we tell the story, we wash our hands with a bracha, we do the blessing on the matzah, and so on and so forth. You see that the 12 steps of the Seder that we're quite familiar with. Here is a Seder plate. Again, this is according to the custom of Chabad. Some people have different customs. Some people have two circles on top of each other. This is just, again, a very quick review. Okay, we start off with the idea of Kadesh. We make a cup of wine on a regular time. When we make Kiddush, everyone just takes a sip of wine. On the night of Pesach, it is best that everyone have their own cup of wine. The minimum amount that a person should drink, if possible, obviously, not everyone can drink wine, is 3 ounces. And the question, as we know, and we're going to review, we know this from every year, but again, we have to review this when we go through the Parsha, we go through the Haggadah, is that there are 4 cups of wine that are drunk in the Seder, not 1, like we do on a regular Shabbat or a holiday, but 4. And why do we have 4 cups of wine? Because when we talk about the Exodus, in the Exodus, when we speak about, we learn about the Exodus, God promises the Jewish people through Moses that he's going to take them out of Egypt. And the language that he uses is a specific type of language. He uses 4 words that denote redemption, which are v'hotzesi, v'hitzalti, v'go'alti, v'lakachti, which means v'hotzesi, I will extract, okay, I will rescue, v'hitzalti, I will extract you, I will remove you. V'hitzalti, I will rescue you. V'go'alti, I will redeem you. V'lakachti, and I will take you. And lokachti really means that God is going to make us for his nation. And then the final one that is used in the Torah, but is represented differently, is vehevesi, and I will bring you. And the vehevesi of I will bring you refers to the coming of the Jewish people into the land of Israel. So these are the 4 words of redemption. And you see here, they actually highlighted, which is extract, rescue, liberate, and marry. And the Haggadah here says that marry means take to me, lokachti, but it means that God is going to connect with the Jewish people. This happened, of course, at Mount Sinai. So you have these 4
I don't
languages.
understand.
Sorry, yes.
I don't understand extract and rescue. I don't
Okay.
understand.
Okay, so let me get into that. So when Moses was told, when Moses was told that the Jewish people will be leaving the land of Egypt and that God is going to rescue them, the Torah's language is as follows. God said, how I will take the Jewish people out of Egypt. But he doesn't say, I will take the Jewish people out of Egypt. He says, Vehotsesi, I will take them out. Vihitzalti, I will rescue them. Vigo'alti, I will redeem them. Vilokachti, and I will take them.
Again, take them, so twice take them.
No.
Take them once.
No,
I don't.
Again, let's review.
First one, take them out.
No. Hotsesi, I will take you out. Okay?
Take you out.
Lehotsi, to take out. I will remove you.
Okay.
Right? I will remove you from Egypt. That's what happened. Vihitzalti, I will rescue you.
So what's the difference? What does it mean? I will rescue?
It's different parts of rescue. When you rescue someone, right? First part is you have to physically remove them. That's what God did. He physically removed them.
Okay.
Then he saved them, because when you are going out of a dangerous place, there's risk involved, and you could get injured, you could get hurt, you could get killed, right? We know people who try to escape.
You split this year, I understand. So you rescued them.
Yeah, rescue. The Go'alti, and I will liberate you.
Wait a second. Already, but I don't understand now suddenly liberate. So you rescued, you took them out.
Yes. And then the next language that is used in the Torah is Go'alti, and I will liberate you. And Go'alti comes from the word Geula, to liberate or redemption. And again, why does God need to liberate a people that he already took out and rescued?
Right.
Why the need for this language? The Torah doesn't use words for nothing. It's not trying to be poetic. Because when a person is a slave for 210 years, like the Jewish people were, what happens? We know that even for a much shorter amount of time, people who are conditioned to a certain way have a hard time letting go of that way, because that becomes their security blanket. And so this is true for all of us, but it was especially true for the Jewish people, that God couldn't only just remove them, which he did. He also had to ensure that when he removed them, that he was saving them and not hurting them. We know that there was rescue operations that happen, like military rescue operations, where the people are extracted, but they get killed on the way out. That's not good. So They are taken out. Hotsesi, I take out.
Right.
Itzalti, I will save you.
Yeah, now liberate.
Vigoalti, I will liberate you. Now, what does it mean you'll be liberated? It means that you will detach from your oppressors physically, mentally, and emotionally. Because one of the side effects, unfortunately, of someone who is in an abusive relationship, someone who is in jail, someone who is in a situation where they have a captor, is that with time, and we know this so often, we've seen this unfortunately in the United States, there were famous abductions where young people were abducted and kept under lock and key, sometimes even impregnated against their will, and they never left. And the question is, why didn't you leave? You knew these people were bad to you. You knew that they took you from your parents' house. You knew that they were oppressing you. Why did you never leave? And the answer is that they were psychologically conditioned to see these people, as bad as they were, as somehow helpful and responsible for their well-being. And so they don't look for help. And we know this, there's a Stockholm syndrome where people start to identify with their oppressors. And the Stockholm syndrome that was identified is a syndrome that was identified after a short amount of time, not after hundreds of years, and not after intergenerational trauma. So if this is true for a single person in a single episode of being taken as a slave or being taken captive and starting to identify with their captors, how much more so is this true for intergenerational trauma, where generation after generation starts to identify with their captors, this in this case being the Egyptians, and seeing them as people who at the end of the day gave them job security, they had a place to live, and so on and so forth.
I want to hear the fourth one.
So,
the fourth one.
Yes. So what happens is
the fourth one. That I understand.
Okay. So what happens? I'm just saying. What happens is, like, you see sometimes people who are in jail often will do a minor crime to go back into jail, because at least in jail they got their 3 squares. And so when a person is liberated, there's much more than just taking them out. It's taking them out, ensuring they're safe, and then liberating them emotionally, physically, and spiritually. This was a process that unfortunately took longer than.
This is the reason that it took 40 years, right? To change
eventually, that's the reason it took 40 years, because God would liberate them.
That's clear, Devorah, darling. I don't want to take your time.
And then finally,
I didn't understand. Slowly.
Yes, and finally, Vilakachti, and I will take you to me. So what does it mean?
You already took them out.
No, but it's not take out. I take you for me. I take you for me, meaning that what? That the Jewish people become part of God's people. That whereas they identify.
Can you please say it again in English? Take you what?
Take lakachti. I will take you to me.
Take you to me.
Yes.
It means you will give the Torah.
Where did this happen? Where did God take us to him?
On
it happened at Mount Sinai.
Okay.
At Mount Sinai, God gave us a constitution, and he said, V'atem yihiu li mamleches kohanim v'go kadosh. And you will be for me a nation of priests and a holy nation. So we became God's people. We became God's people through this transaction of God taking us out and the covenant that we made at Mount Sinai. And as we know, when we're going to get into the Dayenu, we say, Ilu hotziyanu mitzrayim Dayenu. If God would have taken us out of Egypt, it would have been enough. But God brought us to the Torah. So the last one, which is not in the 4 cups of wine, is vehevesi, and I will bring you. Where will I bring you? After I make this covenant and after you become my people, where will I bring you? I will bring you to the land of Israel and to live there. Now, on the Seder table where we have our Seder table, we have the cup of Elijah. So the cup of Elijah represents that 5th language. The 5th language of I will bring you is represented in the cup of Elijah, and the 4 cups are represented in those 4 words of deliverance. Okay, that's why we drink.
Thank you very much. Great.
And because of that, we make a prayer every single time on the 4 cups of wine. Okay, now, then here is the Kiddush, self-explanatory. Okay, so we start with the Kiddush. After we have the Kiddush, we wash our hands, and we know when we wash our hands this time, we do not make a blessing. Why don't we wash our hands? Why do we wash our hands without a blessing? Because we have a law that when we touch raw vegetables and we in a wet way, we dip it into water, we have to wash our hands first. Okay, and it's a kind of a ritual washing. Now it's very interesting that anytime you touch, we eat bread, we wash our hands, but because we usually eat bread with our hands. But when we eat a vegetable and we dip the vegetable in salt water, in this case, we are touching, we're making our hands kind of wet with water and eating the vegetable. We have to wash our hands first. You could say that it's hygienic. Like we know that water will kind of transmit what is on our hands, but also spiritually speaking, this was something that was done in the temple times. The temple times, that's what they used to do. Before they touched water, they used to wash their hands. And this is a reminder also of what was done in temple times. Okay, so that's orchatz. The second, we don't make a blessing. There are 2 times we wash. The first time we wash without a blessing, and the second time we wash with a blessing. Now, after that, we eat the karpas, which is the vegetable, and we make a blessing hadama on it. When we make a blessing hadama on it, we should have in mind that the maror, because maror is a vegetable that's hard to say a blessing on. So when we make this blessing, we have in mind the maror, and we know that this vegetable dipped in salt water represents the tears of the subjugation of the Jewish people. Okay. Now we go to yachatz. What is yachatz? Yachatz is when we take the middle matzah and we break the middle matzah in half. There is a custom that we hide the matzah for the afikomen, and as we know, the children look for the afikomen. There is a custom that we have to break the middle matzah into a few pieces, and here is the custom that I can highlight it for you here. There's a custom that is a Chabad custom, is to break the larger part into 5 pieces, and this is because there is the notion of speech. Okay, so let me just find this. Okay, so God brings his thoughts through reality through our tongue, our throat, our palate, our teeth, and our lips. And these are, I guess, the 5 aspects of speaking. And speaking has a lot of energy in it. So we divide the 5 pieces of matzah, the middle matzah, into 5. Now, the matzahs that we have 3 matzahs, right, in the kaira. The first matzah is called the Kohen matzah. The middle matzah is called the Levi matzah. And the last matzah is called the Yisrael matzah. Alternatively, the top matzah is a matzah that represents Abraham. The middle matzah represents Isaac. And the final matzah represents Jacob. Now, why do we have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as represented in the matzah? And this is because we are incorporating in the 3 matzahs. And it's interesting, we have 3 matzahs and we don't have what? We don't have 2. Right, usually we have 2 pieces of bread. We have lechem mishnah, we have 2. On Pesach, we have 3 matzahs. Why do we have 3? So the reason why we have 3 matzahs is because we are tapping in to different elements of the Jewish people, the Kohen, the Levi, and the Yisrael. That's one reason. But on a deeper level, on a more mystical level, it's because the 3 matzahs represented by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob represent 3 elements of divine energy that we have on Pesach, that is revealed on Pesach. The top is Abraham, and Abraham is always associated with chesed, with kindness. So the top matzah represents kindness. The middle matzah represents Yitzchak. Yitzchak, Isaac, is associated Kabbalistically with Devorah. What's Devorah? Devorah is sometimes understood as holding back, restriction. It's sometimes seen as judgment. It's seen as constriction. So any type of judgment, constriction, holding back, and also manifestation of strength, Devorah, is in the middle matzah. And essentially, what are we doing? We put the chesed on the top. We put the kindness on the top. We sandwich the Devorah. We sandwich the strength and the judgment in the middle. And then we have the bottom matzah. The bottom matzah, the last matzah, represents Jacob. And Jacob represents the perfect balance between kindness and severity, between chesed and Devorah. And Jacob represents Tiferes, which is balance or harmony of the two. We know that too much kindness leads to cruelty. Too much severity leads to cruelty. But a good balance between kindness and severity leads to a holistic balance in the world. And what we do is we take the strict matzah, we take the matzah that is potent and Devorah, and we sandwich it where we put it 1, 2, and 3. The middle one is like hidden because we are hiding the manifestation of severity and judgment. And then this is the matzah that we break. What do we break? We break the judgment. And I just want to take a minute to discuss that, because I think it's so important that when we look at these teachings that we find, like I say, between the matzahs, the teachings that are found between the matzahs, it is very instructive on a greater Jewish worldview or Weltanschauung. There's a greater Jewish idea that is found in the notion. Like, nothing that we do at the Seder is happenstance. It's not because it's cute. We have 3 matzahs because it represents 3 different energies. The way we put the middle matzah, the matzah that represents severity and judgment, and we hide it between kindness and balance or compassion, and we hide it in between. And that is the one that we choose to break. What do we break? We break severity. It teaches us something very important about the way Jewish people remember things that are difficult, in that even when we're talking about what happened to us in Egypt, and even when we're remembering the suffering of the Jewish people, and so we're evoking, you could say, a certain nostalgia, or not a nostalgia for something that you like, but a certain kind of maybe rumination of what happened to us. And you could say, like, if at the forefront and the forecenter of all of this is the notion of retribution, that, we're talking about what happened to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians suffered and they got paid back for what they did. And there should be celebration, right? And we see this in other cultures, that when their enemies, when they remember the defeat of their enemies, there's a great celebration, not for them being saved only, but also for the destruction of their enemies. And that is celebrated as the primal or the overarching purpose of the celebration. But when we celebrate Pesach, yes, we do remember the need for Devorah. We do remember that God needed to schlepp us out with strength, and God had to do things that were painful to other human beings because they needed to have that retribution, like any evildoers need to have the retribution. But even so, even though we're commemorating this, we slip the matzah that represents retribution and judgment and severity, and we're holding in between the layers. We put them in between the layers, because to be a Jew is not to focus only that we can't forget what happened to us, because, as we say, first of all, those who forget their history are condemned to repeat it. But also we relive the energies of what happened then at this time. But still, we see, and we'll see this in other parts of the Seder, that we minimize the manifestation of God's strength. Even though we speak about it, we hide it in between the matzahs. And so I think it's a very important notion that we have, which is that even in the story of Passover, the pathway of a Jew is to use retribution, to use judgment, to use severity in a way that is not hidden, but at least minimized or put in its right place in the middle. Don't put it on top. Don't make this Seder about that. It's about the goodness and the kindness and the connection that we forged with God. Yes, part of that was also the victory over the Egyptians, but that does not become the main story for us. What the story is for us is that God cared enough about us to take us out of Egypt and to help us get out of a slave mindset and to help us get past our slave mindset and to be a people with a positive mission and a positive purpose that wherever we go, we become a light unto the nations. And that was the purpose of the Exodus. The purpose of the Exodus was not just to leave the slavery. The purpose of the Exodus was also that we connect to something higher, we connect to God, we connect to a higher purpose, we connect to being a light unto the nations. And this is what has sustained us throughout the years. This is the notion, the mission statement of the Jewish people, which was enshrined together with the Exodus, and it is in bound with the Exodus, that we did not leave Egypt without having a Sinai. And that's why the 4 languages of redemption and the 4 cups, it's not just that we drink wine because we're having a good time, but the 4 languages of redemption have to be manifest throughout the Seder in a very physical and tangible way, which is to actually drink wine for each of the languages that the Torah tells us about our liberation. And if you look at the words of our liberation, if you look at the 4 glasses that we drink, the 4 cups of wine that we drink, what are we drinking to? What are we saying l'chaim to? We're not saying l'chaim to the fact that the Egyptians were suffering. We're not saying l'chaim to the fact that there were 10 plagues. So we recognize God's grace in using the means, whatever he had to do to free us from slavery. And we certainly mention the 10 plagues. But when we talk about the celebration, when we talk about the celebration of each of our Seder, what do we remember? What do we celebrate? What do we exult in? What do we rejoice about? We don't rejoice about the pain of the Egyptians or the suffering of the Egyptians or the punishment towards the Egyptians, though we do remember it. What do we rejoice? We rejoice, first of all, with the 4 cups of wine, the 4 cups of wine for the 4 languages of redemption that we mentioned before. And the reason why we use wine, first of all, wine, of course, is used for all sacrament in the Jewish tradition. We use a wine under the chuppah. We use a wine for a bris. We use a wine for Shabbat. We use a wine for holidays. Wine is part of our sacrament in our tradition. But also, when we talk about celebrating a holiday like Pesach, we're talking about that the wine is to make us joyful. And the Tanakh says, the yayin yismach levav enosh, that wine helps relax us and rejoice our hearts. So wine is a symbol of celebration. And what do we celebrate? We don't celebrate the judgment. We celebrate the deliverance. We celebrate that God took us out, that God kept us safe, that God redeemed us from our own mindset, that he took us to become his people, which is the greatest gift that he gave us, a constitution to be a light unto the nations, so that till this day, this sustains us and empowers us. And that's what we celebrate. That is the focal point of our celebration. And that's why when we have the 3 matzahs, the matzah that represents chesed, kindness, is on top. The matzah that represents Devorah, restriction and judgment, is sandwiched in the middle, and that's the one that's broken. And the one that's on bottom, that sandwiches those two, is again Tiferes, which is balance. And this is something that we have to remember. This is part of the reason why we say the Dayenu. And if we look at other oppressed people, and what comes to mind to me, first of all, today's day and age, is we talk about the African American experience. You have a people that were enslaved in chains, taken out of their comfort zone and used as slave labor to build a country. Very similar to what happened to the Jewish people, differently, because we came to Egypt on our own volition and only became enslaved. They were actually put on ships and enslaved, but they have the similar idea that they were used to build up the crops and they were built to use up the economy. and they were treated very, very poorly and harshly, and families were broken, and women were used to sire more slaves, and so on and so forth, everything that slavery encapsulates. And they were also freed from slavery by edict, Abraham Lincoln. And later on, even though they were freed from slavery, they still had a lot of prejudice, and so you have the civil rights movement in the 1960s. But still today, in 2022, you have a disconnect and discomfort, right? That you have African Americans feel that they still haven't been liberated. And part of the reason for that is that when they were liberated from slavery, they never got a Torah. They never were taken up by a Moses with a mission statement. They were just liberated. And so to be liberated and to be left alone and not to be rehabilitated after centuries of slavery, then they suffer from endemic problems with lack of, let's say, fathers in the house, because slavery broke the family unit. Slavery did that to them, but they were never able to rebuild it. And that is because they didn't have a Moses. They had Grandma Moses, but they didn't have a Moses that took them out of slavery and gave them a Torah. And the Torah is what we celebrate, that God redeemed us. And that's why we say that if God would not have redeemed us from Egypt, if God would not have redeemed us from Egypt and brought us to be his people at Mount Sinai, we would still be enslaved in Egypt. In other words, there was nothing about us, biologically, genetically, familially speaking, that was somehow more blessed, except for the merit of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But the fact that God had compassion on us and didn't just take us out of Egypt, but removed us and also elevated us, and then gave us a mission statement and a Torah. And the Torah is what keeps us going till this very day, is really part and parcel of the Passover celebration, and it cannot be separated. And so when you're going to be at the Seder table, and when you're going to drink the 4 cups of wine, remember this, that for every cup that you're drinking to a positive expression of divine love that manifested itself 3,300 years ago to our people. And whether someone is Jewish by birth or someone is Jewish by choice, their destiny is with the Jewish people. And we know that every single soul that ultimately becomes part of the Jewish people found their way to Mount Sinai. And so the experience that we have and the pleasure that we have is not in the fact, and the rejoicing that we have is not in the fact that our enemies are suffering, but rather that we were blessed with an abundance of divine revelation, 4 types of revelation, nothing less, 4 types of revelation that ensured that we would be a people that would be able to lift our heads high and build and live with a destiny. And even though the Jewish people went back into Egypt many times over, the last one is in the past century with the Holocaust, where we had again the idea of Egypt. The fact that we had the primal experience of redemption, because we have experienced that, then the blessings that God has, the Hatzetzi, the Hitzalti, the Ga'alti, the Lakachti, the 4 languages of redemption, always stay with us and give us the possibility of dreaming and hoping for a better day, and actually hold us through our difficulties. So when we make our 4 cups of wine at the Seder, this is the meditation I want you to think about. I want you to think about the fact that each of these cups represents a divine revelation, cosmically speaking, for the world, specifically for the Jewish people, that we were blessed with a God that just didn't take us out of an Egypt, but helped us rehabilitate and have a positive mission statement to identify with something higher than ourselves and not get stuck in another Egypt. And each of those 4 languages, each of the 4 languages that are as represented as 4 cups, represents that deliverance, and that is what we celebrate. And not just that bad things happen to people who hurt us, but rather the open and revealed good and the revelation. And our sages tell us that as we celebrate the calendar year, we know that we always have to celebrate Pesach in spring, right? That's why we have a leap year this year. What we're doing essentially is when we go through the clock, okay, when we through the calendar, and we kind of go through the same days. The days that this happened to us was in spring. in the beginning of spring. And so when we get into spring ourselves, we are re-experiencing the divine blessing and manifestations. That means it's there for us. And so we take that, and when we drink those 4 cups of wine, we should do it with purpose and a meditative expression of saying, this is for the redemption of God removing me from a difficult situation. Egypt, first of all, the primal Egypt, but any Egypt that we may experience. And the blessing, God, please remove me from Egypt, and then save me, and then really redeem me, and then take me, make me connected to you. Those are the 4 things, the 4 meditations that we can have while we experience the Seder, and this will create a very different feeling. Instead of drinking 4 cups of delicious wine, to know that each of those things represents a historical deliverance, but also an ongoing energy of deliverance. So if in our own lives we need to be taken out of something because we can't help ourselves, or we can't help someone that we love, or we need to be delivered from something, we need to be redeemed, we need to be in God's shelter, we need God's grace, those 4 cups of wine represent those 4 messages. And that's something that we should meditate and think about. In the next class that I'm going to give you, Be'ezras Hashem, next Tuesday, we're going to go into Magid, into the actual discussion in the Haggadah, and the 4 questions, and the rabbi's discussion, and also the big question that I want you to do some research on. Why was Moses not mentioned in the Haggadah? Moses is the one who is the deliverer of the Jewish people. There's a few answers to that. So that's something that I want you to think about. And in the meantime, I wish you easy preparations for Pesach, and I look forward to continuing this conversation with you. Again, if you have any questions, or if you want to have something highlighted or explained, like we did at the beginning of the class, I'll be happy to do so. And I'll be happy to, if I don't know the answer, I'll be happy to find out the answer for you with pleasure. And together we will go into Pesach with a heightened state of awareness and celebration, because mindfulness and being present in not just doing the rote, and not just doing it because it's a tradition. Though tradition, like I said, is so important, because that's how we are here. We have that sense of tradition that we have to do it because this is what was done before us. And that's what we want to inculcate in our children, that it should be done before them too. But nevertheless, we say that we have to also inculcate the message of Passover. And this way we experience Passover, that when we finish Passover, we are now different people, and more open, and more sensitive, spiritually speaking, and more blessed. So thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to getting into the Magid next week and the rest of the Haggadah. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. And
I cannot believe it. It was the best for me. It was the most important. I never knew that comments connected to negativity. Everything you say today, I'm going to speak to my grandchildren and quote the Rebbetzin, because they like to know which rabbi said, who said. So I will say, Rebbetzin Devorah said that.
Yes. And the idea of chametz being connected to negativity is found throughout the writings of our.
Who said? I never in my field.
There's too much to mention. There's
I know, but I just everything you say
it's from essentially the root of it is the Kabbalah. That's the root of it, because Kabbalah sees everything in different dimensions. Actually, one last thought. The word Seder, very interesting thought. The word Seder is made of letters rather. Samach, Daled, Reish. Samach, Daled, Reish. And Samach, Daled, Reish represents the notion of the 3 levels of understanding. We know that.
Please close somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna do that. We know that there are 4 levels of understanding Torah: Pshat, Remesh, Drush, Sod. Right? There's 4 levels of understanding: the basic meaning, the plain meaning, and there's Drush, Remesh, and Sod. Seder is Sod, Drush, and Remez. Meaning, you talk about the secrets, the analogies, and the hints. And the question is, why doesn't Seder also have an idea for Pshat, the plain meaning of the verse? And the answer is simply because when we do a Seder properly, to really do a Seder properly, and not just by rote, we do have to delve into the drush, deeper meaning, the sod, the mystical meaning, and the remez and the hinted meanings, because this is what really gives us the color and the experience. And we know, and we're going to get into this next week, that Rabbi Akiva, and that's the Haggadah tells us that Rabbi Akiva stayed up till 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, talking about the leaving of Egypt, explaining the Haggadah. And you ask yourself, what are they talking about all night long? I mean, it's not like they did it Pesach once. They're doing Pesach every single year. So what are they talking about all night long? It said that they were saying, they were talking about the Exodus until their students came, the students who came to daven and shul said, Rabbi Seinu, Rabbis, the time of davening in the morning has arrived. So what are you doing? You're still doing the Seder. So what were they discussing? This is what they were discussing, getting into between the Matzahs and getting into the deeper meaning of it. Because when we go into Pesach with that deeper meaning, it makes a completely different experience. Because we could do things because we have to, because that's the way it was done, and that's the tradition, and we do it because we have to do it for our children, but also we can go through that very same journey, the 12, the 14 steps of the Seder, and make it something that changes us, that uplifts us, that actually gives us spiritual energy and spiritual fortitude to go through our day-to-day, and especially today's day and age. I think that, like, when we think that we don't need this anymore, and we've reached we got it all figured out, we realize the world still needs a lot of understanding and spirituality and blessing. And so Pesach becomes a time where we can go to the well, as it were. We go to the spiritual Jewish well and find the meaning for ourselves and for our families, and draw from that well, and it gives us the inspiration and blessing that we need. And that is what I would like to do with this class. And as Hashem, I'm going to put it online. Someone said, how can we see this class again? I'll send out an email to the ladies list. The problem that I have is that I don't have a very organized list. I'm working on it. I would like to say I could put it on my website, but I don't know how to do that very well. But I'm going to put a recording of the class on Chabad Westmount YouTube, and I'm gonna put a link to it. I'll send a link by email for those people who want to see it again, because I know some women couldn't come today and some people had to leave, etc., etc. So I will put it up again, and hopefully together we will go through a Pesach that is inspired and blessed. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And again, any email, any questions, you could also ask me personally if you want to send me a message, Devorah@chabadwestmount.com. If you didn't
Devorah,
get
I don't keep you. I don't understand the word Seder. What the word Seder means?
Seder means order. Seder means order. Yeah,
all right.
This is the order. So
and what is secrets? I didn't understand.
Samach.
Yeah.
So the masters say, the masters of the Hasidic masters say that the Samach in Seder stands for Sod, which means secret. The Dalet, secrets meaning not the secrets, the mystical teachings that are found between the layers. They're not obvious. Drush,
so mystical.
Yeah, the Dalet is for Drush, which are the explanations that are found, the deeper explanations,
What is Dalet for? What's the word?
Drush, like drasha. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, the Reish is for remez. Remez are the hints that are found in words that teach us an idea. So Seder stands for Sod, Drush, and remez. And the question is, why not also Pshat? So the answer is that the Pshat is there.
Pshat is like Drush.
Yeah, Pshat means the simple meaning. So why don't we have Pshat as part of the word of Seder? So they say, because first of all, the Pshat is in the Haggadah. But more than that, to truly experience Pesach, you have to touch a little bit of the mystical, a little bit of the analogies, and a little bit of the hints. And that really is the way Pesach should be done, not on a superficial level, but in a multi-dimensional level. And this way we are more in tune to what
Thank you
has
very much.
I hope this was a good.
I'm looking forward, Devorah,
yes.
next Tuesday. And your analogy with the blacks was fantastic.
Well, this is something that I thought about because I think it's one of the great tragedies that we see in our time, that people who suffered so much still haven't had, either from a societal perspective and even
such a good
familial. So and you know what? And for that we say, veer for the grace of God, go we, because we as enslaved people understand how we for 40 years could not stop being in a slave mentality, and God had to help us. But what really got us out of the slave mentality, really, God giving us the Torah. He said, forget what you know from before. This is your new reality. This is how you live from now on. This is going to be something that you will pass on to your children and grandchildren, and you will reject the ethos of Egypt. You will reject the ethos of the Middle East. You're going to live with a higher goal. You're going to live with a structure that's going to be connected to the divine. And this way, even when you are in Egypt, like the Jewish people were many times after, you're never going to be completely in the Egypt, because you're
And
always
here 200 years is Gurnish.
Yes.
200 years and nothing changed.
Yes.
Devorah,
It
Yes.
was fantastic.
Devorah,
Yes.
you know what? I will drink to that.
Yes. Yes.
And also, I just want to ask you, you know, yesterday you showed this beautiful Magen David with
Yes.
that round thing. Can you please send it to us?
Okay, so you know what? I'm going to try to figure out how I can have a portal where I can I'm going to ask my son-in-law, because he's very good at the computer, to have, let's say, a portal on the website for my class that I can upload things that you can just get a link.
A great idea.
Yeah, so that's something that I'm not so good at, but I'm going to ask him so we can have, let's say, if you want references or links.
Because this would be your archive. It would be precious.
Exactly. And I could put up the copies of the links to the classes, and also some of the resources or some of the reference points that we made, so you can have access to it and study it or download it at your leisure as well. So that's
still nothing. I think I talked on all of us.
Right.
We have nothing replaces seeing your beautiful face and your passion on the screen. Honestly,
Devorah, yesterday I wasn't at your class. I was flying. I was on a plane.
I know.
And send me that.
Bubby duty. Bubby duty is the most important duty, though. I have to say that when you realize how much work is involved with taking care of small children, I've done my share of Bubby duty here and there.
Oh my gosh!
You realize that it's quite physically demanding, and parents have to have all the support that they need, because they're doing it 24/7. And on the other hand, children are the greatest blessing, and they're the future of our people. And
absolutely.
And even when we do the Seder, which we're going to talk about this next week, how so much of the Seder is centered on the child.
Children, yeah.
Yes, the children.
You know what? I look forward to my Monday mornings.
Okay, very good. And the child within us as well, because we ask questions sometimes, and we don't get permission to ask questions. On Pesach, we're told to ask questions, so we should ask questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining me.
Somebody asked you something,
Yeah.
something nice. I don't know, from yesterday class, because I was flying.
Yeah.
Send me that.
Okay.
David,
I'm going to try to make a portal. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Don't forget
have a great week and a joyful week of preparations. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to answer you. Thank you.